Hello, my name is Byron Woodson, and I will be your host for this rip-roaring adventure into design. I've created the Dream Create Hustle course to allow people to have a methodology or a process to reliably achieve all of their goals. It takes you through the 3 stages and 9 phases that every goal, company, life, project must pass. And the 3 phases I call Dream, Create, and Hustle. So in the Dream phase, what you'll do is you'll imagine a new reality that you want to live into and all of the things that you want to create for yourself, your company, your family, whatever it is. In the create phase, you'll take whatever dreams you've created and start to imagine and actually build the systems that allow that to happen. And in the hustle phase, once you've built all your systems, you do the work that you need to do to get it done. So what we're doing today is we're going over the dream phase of this. So the dream phase is actually one of 3 parts of the Dream Create Hustle system. The dream phase has 3 phases, which are design, discover, and draft. In design, we talk about the requirements that people have for whatever it is they do. Discover has you then look at the world to see what exists, what doesn't exist yet, what needs to happen for your goal to work out. And the draft phase is when you start to create like a blueprint for how you're going to do whatever you're going to do. And in the design phase, we're going to get into what I like to call choosing your victory conditions. One of the most important aspects of success is defining it yourself. If you let other people define yourself, then you're always chasing after what it is that they want. In your personal life, if somebody says do this, if your parents say become a lawyer, they're going to judge you according to whether you become a lawyer or not. In the market, if you are building a company, if you let your competitors say these are the most important things about this product or service that we create, then you're always going to be chasing those. So what you do in the design is you actually choose what it is that you want that says you win, and later get other people to agree with you. So what people usually struggle with is what to do. A lot of people don't know how to think about what it is that they want in a regular fashion. And if they do find something, it may not fulfill them or fulfill, the requirements of the market or the customers or the investors or whoever it is that you might be trying to serve. And speaking of serving, it might be, a volunteer organization. What can you do for that volunteer organization opposed to what do you already do? What can you learn? What can you offer, etc. The other thing that people struggle with is trying to find something that's not only going to fulfill them personally, but that's actually going to have an impact on the world. It's nice to live a life of luxury and vacations all of the time, but if you're the only one doing it and everybody else around you is struggling and not having a good time, you're not really having a decent impact on the world. And the other thing that people kind of struggle to do is to kind of figure out what the energy and effort it is to make some of their dreams a reality. Clearly, if you want to go to college, it's 4 years. If you want to get an MBA, that's another year for a master's degree. If you want to build a company, it can take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years, depending on how complex it is, etc. So one of the things we're going to talk about is how to estimate or how to qualify and be clear about what type of energy and effort you're going to need to put into your dreams to make them real. Now, this course will take you from being pretty unclear about your goals to clear about the values that guide whatever you do. See, goals are just, sometimes they are, hey, I want to get 4 of these or 7 of those. So do something very specific. But why that goal, right? Why 3? Why 7? And when you start to talk about the why and the values behind why you decide those things, then you'll start to free yourself up from having to get 3 or 7. It might be 30. It might be 700. Or it might be 2 of a completely different thing because you find something that more accurately or better fulfills the values that you have that guide your goals. You'll be unsure about what's valuable or right in the context. And, well, that's what we're going to go from. And we're going to go to focus on what's important and meaningful. Because sometimes you're in situations that are not very clearly defined. If you're creating a company, you're not sure what the market's like. If you're dating someone new, you're not sure what they do or don't like. So what you do instead of worrying about the uncertainty is to figure out what's important and meaningful for you to be doing and to do that. And that will definitely help make you a little more productive, or a lot more productive and purposeful in whatever it is that you undertake. And it'll also take you from how to not being sure about being able to do big things to more easily include or exclude what's useful and not important. A lot of people get overwhelmed by, big undertakings and big life changes or large projects. If you have to build a skyscraper, that's a lot of stuff. One of the things of design is being able to create a context in which you can then think about things in smaller chunks. Big things are made of little things, and little things are made of smaller things. And when you start to figure out what it is exactly that you want, also what comes into play is how that's going to happen. Now, that's actually not the design phase, but the more specific you get about the requirements that you have, or the requirements that you need to fulfill, the easier it is to undertake something, because you're a lot more clear about what to do and what not to do. That's in the what to include or exclude. And, you're a lot more learned about what's useful and not important. So you might think somebody needs you to do 300 hours worth of work, and then after talking to them, it's only 100 hours, and 100 hours, that's 2.5 weeks in a business week. 9 to 5 business job. And now in the Dream Create Hustle courses, we each of these modules has a central guiding question that you ask and that you try to answer. Sometimes the answer is clear, sometimes it's not. The guiding question for design is why. Because, Simon Sinek has a great book called How to Start with Why. And basically it is a admonition to leaders to be very clear about why you are doing something. And when you are clear about that, what then starts to happen is other things that you thought were important become less important, and then you don't have to do those. And that's important because, we only have but so many hours in a day and minutes in a week. And you have to be very clear about what you are going to do in order to fulfill the design that you have or the intention that you have. And that only makes sense if you understand why. And why also allows you to pick multiple things. So if you're hungry and you want to go get a burger, well, why a burger? Because, a burger's filling, or a burger's closer, and, a burger's in the fridge or something. And that's why you choose that. So you might have something where you're hungry, and the next day you say, well, there's a burger in the fridge and there's a burger filling, but I want a different type of food. And the question why will tell you, okay, if you ask why do you want a different type of food, you say, well, I had a burger yesterday. That explains that. So now you can go get a burger from somewhere else, or, another favorite kind of food. So why allows you, asking yourself why multiple times and in multiple contexts and from multiple angles, allows you to more clearly define what it is that you're going to create and spend your time and energy doing. Now, the core value or core themes in design are a couple things: intentions, values, the domain, the requirements, and the criteria. So, design is a very big thing, and it's very hard to wrap your head around it because it happens so many times. Like, somebody designed this fantastic shirt. Evolution designed the shape of humans' heads, or God, whatever works for you. Somebody designed this fantastic mic and this screen. So when I start spitting into the mic, it doesn't actually hit it and make extra noise. So what happens is people design things in different contexts. And when you start to refine the context inside of which you're trying to figure out something, then you limit the amount of things that you can think about. And that's a good thing. Sure, in the beginning you say, hey, I want to do good in the world. Okay. Does that mean you're going to fly over the world like Mother Teresa and do good? Or does that mean you're going to find volunteer organization a few blocks from your house? Or does that mean you're going to start a new company, nonprofit? These the intentions that you have on how to fulfill on your values start limiting and focusing what type of things you're going to do and what things you're going to do. In case, sorry, I didn't make it specific that or explicit that all of these things work together. This isn't just, intentions, then values, then domain, then requirements, then criteria. They interact with each other. So you might have a criteria that comes up that changes the intentions that you have because, maybe you want to create book bags, but you have a book bag for just young kids instead of older people that have laptops and messenger bags. You just want to have school bags. Then what happens is that modifies your attention because you're no longer intending to work with young professionals. You're intending to work with kids in, whatever type of feedback process that you have for that thing. Oh, let me switch this for you so I'm not blocking. There we go. Boom. I'm over here now. So the intentions are definitely what you want to accomplish, and the values are the things that you judge those intentions by. So an intention might be, I want to create this. A value is, I want it to be loving. So if you want something to be loving, then you can do things that intend to be loving. It's very difficult to describe about these things without having clear examples, but we'll get to that in a minute. In the domain, you see I put in front of that subdomain. And what that does is that helps you further specify whatever the intention or value or where you're going to make that manifest. You can be in construction. So there's construction. Yeah, everybody loves construction because everybody loves the buildings that we go into. But then you have to figure out, are you in residential construction? Are you in commercial construction? Are you in industrial construction? Each of these, you can probably be in all three. However, each of them requires different tool sets. Each of them requires different scales of projects. And, each of them require different scales of financial resources to execute those. You might be able to build a house for $200,000, but you can't build a shopping mall for $200,000. You might be in residential construction, or you might be, constructing military bases. These require a whole lot of different things. So when you further specify the domains inside of which you're trying to fulfill your intentions and values, then you'll be a lot clearer about what you could, should, and won't research, which is the next stage in Discover Me. And the requirements and criteria are, have a specific relationship. The requirements is just a general thing, like, I want a chair. The criteria is, well, a blue chair or a red chair. So the criteria is like a subdomain of a requirement. So the criteria has specific specifications that say whether that something specific is fulfilled, whereas the requirement is a lot more general. I want a burger. Okay, do you want a thin patty? Do you want an Impossible burger? So the requirement is a burger, and the criteria is it still meat-based? Is it not meat-based? Is it an Angus burger? Do you want cheese on it? Etc. So these are all things that we're thinking about. Now, what happens in designing and, your individual life or in companies, what it also does is it guides people to later so they can, whenever they have questions, they can go back to the future. And what I mean by that is when you have an intention, you imagine a future state that exists. And you say, I want, this burger in my mouth. That's the future state that you want. And if you get on the phone and you forget what it is that you were doing, you have to think back about what you were going to do, which is order a burger. And the same thing happens, if people misplace keys all the time, or they go upstairs and forget about what it is that they're doing, but or supposed to be doing upstairs. What are you looking for, etc. So what happens is when you go into design and you get into a very, very clear understanding of what it is that you're trying to do for yourself and with other people, when you have to figure it out, you can go back to that future representation of a better reality and refer to that as the guide, because sometimes, things change, situations change, and you can either be very clear or committed to the way you're trying to do something that may not have the intended effect, or you can be aligned to the actual effect that you wanted to create, which is a lot better, because what you want to do in life is not just do things that may or may not make a difference. You want to make the difference, and that's helpful when you have a design in mind about what it is that you're going to do. Now, design happens, and the beginning, of this is at least a 9-step process. And, if you search for internet and design processes, you'll see a couple beautiful presentations of how design plays into the overall process of creation and building and ideation and so forth. This right here is a nice little, it kind of goes over a couple of the stages. Again, there's the design challenge, what it is that we're going to do, research and synthesis. Research for us would be discover, synthesis would be for us draft, and then the converge and diverge. What will happen is, the converge is you're actually, well, let's talk about the whole thing. So at the beginning of the design challenge, you're trying to focus, right? Let's focus. And then the research phase goes out, because what you're looking for are different opportunities, examples, more information about what's wrong, what may be happening, what could be happening, what should be happening. And that's all more information than you have in your brain. So the research phase expands your attention so that you can, pick different options and opportunities to fulfill. And then the synthesis is, once you've searched the world, you figure out the subdomain or the specific implementation that you can use to guide what it is that you're going to do. Now, that doesn't mean that other people can't do other things. This is just you design, discover, and draft, and to figure out what it is that you're going to do. And then, here we have that converge phase. And then we would jump into, for us, it is the engineer or organize. I have a couple of ways of thinking about this, and, we'll talk about that later. We have, the engineer, organize, we have the planning and the schedule and the build. So for here, it would be the, ideate, prototype, and test. So the ideate and prototype are, once you figure out what it is that you want to do, let's actually think of how we're going to build this. And then the prototype is doing all the things that you need to do to actually get a model out, that you can use. So if you're a dress designer, you might be thinking, hey, let's do a wedding dress, or let's do, a summer shawl or something. I'm not a wedding designer, or not a designer, so I don't know how to make dresses, and whether it's wedding dresses or summer shawls. So what you want to do is you want to get the materials, you want to find the suppliers that have the type of materials you have, order them, create a cutout or a blueprint of, I forget what those things are called. My mom was a seamstress. I should know these things. So what you do is you get out a prototype. So you might actually make up a model, put on a mannequin, measure, cut, assemble what it is that you want to create. And then, of course, and that might be just that one thing, because you do one-offs. Or if you're going into massive production, that might just be a template for what you do over and over and over again, because, you might be selling it in Target, or you might be selling it at the beach. So the ideate and prototype is when you start to actually figure out how exactly you're going to execute your idea. And the prototype is you actually building your idea as an example or a sample of what you're going to then sell, make again and again and again. And then the next 3 stages here would be test, refine, and deliver. And for us, that would be the hustle phase, and where you actually start doing that over and over and over again. See, in the ideate and prototype phase, when you're doing that, you're actually figuring out the system that then creates this thing over and over and over again. It's kind of like when you buy a computer and you log in and you get all your software. That's you creating the system that then lets you do the work that you have to do. Even though there's a similar theme between the create and the hustle phase, or the build and the operate phase, one of them focuses on the creation of the system, and one of them focuses on the use and execution of the system. Okay. Now, there's another way to think about this that's a little less curvy, and just a couple steps where it focuses on the design part, where you empathize and define. So that's for us, figuring out the requirements, the intentions, the values. And the empathize is when you do that, when you're doing that in conjunction with other people. So you might talk to people, you might ask them what they want from you, especially if you're in a relationship. Mom, do you want me to grow up, be a lawyer or a doctor, or can I own a chain of restaurants? Hopefully she say, I love you, whatever you do, and then judge you accordingly, right? So they emphasize and empathize and define. What you do is you are worried mostly about what humans think about these things. Clearly, you're a human and other humans. This is not empathizing about, or I guess if you're creating a leash, it's important to make sure that the dog is comfortable in that. So maybe it's not just humans. So you empathize and define what it is that you're doing. And the next stage is ideate, prototype, test. We'll deal with that in later courses or later modules. Now, so when you're thinking about these things, it is important not to go so far as to create a model of what it is that you're doing, or in the website world, we call this a high fidelity mockup. What you're trying to do is come up with something that's like between a sketch and a blueprint. So a sketch is like a very ethereal aesthetic. Like, it's not very defined. It doesn't actually have measurements in it, whereas a blueprint does. If you look at a floor plan or a blueprint from a architect, it'll say, the walls are a meter thick for, large, industrial size warehouses and so forth. But, your wall might be 6 inches thick because how thick the bricks are, or how thick the studs in the wall with the plaster on them, or the drywall. How wide does it have to be to get air ducts to go between floors? So these are the things that you have to figure out in a blueprint. Whereas in a sketch, you're not really worried about those specific criteria. So a requirement might be, we have a duct. Criteria is like, well, the duct has to be, this wide. So we don't actually really need to account for the exact width of the duct and the wall that has to surround the duct. We can just say, oh, okay, we need to make sure that there's room for a duct when you're creating a blueprint or plan. So, here you have, a gable roof, you have dormers and, a bay window. So this is what somebody's looking at, what this person wants on the facade of their building. So these are just trying to, give you very abstract and general ideas about what it is that you want to do. You got to create a list of requirements to say, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this. Now, in the website world, what you might be doing is building a website. Instead of looking at what we like to call a high fidelity mockup, you might have wireframes. Now, wireframes, they show you, what things look like. This would be on a tablet, a phone, or a desktop computer at different resolutions and whatnot. And what it does is it forces you to make sure that you include all of the information at different scales. So what's important is that, in website design and development, what's important is that this happens and is, whatever you have on this site is shown in, on multiple devices. Now you'll see that the desktop mockup has 1, 2, 3, 4 things. The tablet has 3, and the phone only has 2. So that's, important for a developer to know, to say, okay, at this resolution, I want this. At this resolution, I want this. Those are some of the flexible requirements that you might have to account for. If you're making t-shirts, are you making t-shirts that are 4T for kids, or are you making t-shirts for 4X for adults? And, what are the different requirements that those things have? So when you design it, I know we created we put a logo on a sweatshirt, and we sent it to the printer. And what we found was that in the sweatshirt, it has little pockets, right? The distance between the top of the pocket and the bottom of the neck on the sweatshirt for the kids was so small that the printer had to put it on the back. So, below a certain requirement, below a certain size, I think it was like a 5T. 5T and below had the imprint on the back, and everything else had the imprint on the front. So you have to make sure that when you're designing something that it, accumulates, or not accumulates, it accommodates whatever requirements of the materials that you're using, etc. Now, of course, that's still not part of design, in that you don't actually have to do the research about all of that. It's definitely important to know, but the design process is more about figuring out what it is that you want. Now, actually dealing with the materials, that's more of the engineering and organizing and, past the blueprint stuff. But right now, we're just thinking about very general, high-level things, right? And in higher fidelity wireframes, which I don't expect you guys to know all of the language, but what happens in wireframes is you basically create a visual layout to make sure that the developer knows what's coming and the client knows, hey, this is what we're going to put here. So, on this one, text, image, button. And then over here, we have a couple of different, ways that the button could look, and a couple of different presentations of, what thumbnails are going to be here, etc. Now, this is a low to fidelity to wireframe. That's what we want to focus on. We don't want to focus on what image are we going to pick, etc. We just want to have general requirements, okay? If you're creating book bags, you got to figure out what the style is going to look like. It could look like, a couple of different styles. Does it have two straps? Are the straps buckling together? How deep is the pocket? Is there another pocket? Is there an inside pocket? Are we going to have a laptop sleeve? Are we going to have little pockets so people can put water bottles? These are the things that you're talking about in the design, like what it actually includes and what it excludes. Seamstresses and fashion designers, real particular about the way things should look. And, the devil's in the details. And she wears Prada. And what happens is, you have to talk about the fabrics, the textures of the fabrics, and that then requires that you know more about manufacturing processes, long staple and short staple cotton, all types of things. However, we're not there yet. Just want you to see that design goes into a lot of things, and you don't actually have to be clear about the details as long as you focus on a particular aspect or direction that you want to go into. That's what design's about. So then later when you're making decisions, you can come back to the future about what it is that you wanted to create. So if you say, hey, I want to create hoodies and sweatshirts, that's great. So you would pick one of these two things, but you wouldn't pick something with shorts. So this helps you focus your energy, your attention, your research in the next phase on figuring out, what it is that you want to do. If you're designing lamps, or furniture, is there a particular period or style that you're used to or that you want to create? These are a lot of the things that you got to think about in design. In your personal life, what's your family going to look like? Is this all you guys grown up with kids and grandkids, or are you just one person and you married into a family? Because you're definitely not imagining what your kids, well, I guess some people actually do say, hey, I want my kids to look like this. I know I want my kids to be, or my son to be over 6 foot, but that's not something that I really, that's that's not in the cards, right? So what we're focused on is trying to figure out like how many people are going to be in your family. Do you want two? Do you want four? Do you want six? Do you want just you? Do you want to get married? Do you not want to get married? Like, what's your future? What's the future that you're living into? What are the criteria that you judge whether you are a successful parent, whether you're a successful spouse or partner to somebody else, or whether you're just a successful person all by yourself? So these are all criteria. These are all intentions. These are all values that you have. And you have to think about the different futures that you can create. And it's comparing between those futures and the options in those futures that allow you to figure out what it is that you want. Right? So if you're picking a vacation, over here is, we have the Leaning Tower Pizza, we have the Sphinx and the Pyramid, and we have the Eiffel Tower. So do you want to go visit famous and historical places, or do you want to just go on a beach and sip margaritas with little umbrellas? So you have to figure out what type of vacation as you're going to get into. Cool. All right. So in design, you have to have there are a couple questions that you ask, right? In addition to why, some of the things that you might ask are, am I actually asking the right questions? So if you're thinking about you and what it is that you want to do, and you start thinking about, what type of college you want to go to, that is in a specific domain. But then, do you actually want to go to college? Would you be happier trying to build your own business? Would you be happier going into the family business? You ask yourself, are you using the right values? So when you're talking to somebody, are you valuing their time? Are you valuing your time? Or are you valuing that you really need to get something done later? So is whatever you're thinking about contributing to the awesomeness of the conversation? When they ask you something or tell you something, are you judging against what you think they should know or what they just discovered? So you have to figure out, okay, when I have this thought about what it is that they're saying, or when I want to say something, why is that important? Like, why am I saying that and not other things? Are you solving the right problem? So if you're trying to, create world peace, can you do that through like Habitat for Humanity, who builds, housing for people? Or are you doing that through making socks and donating that money to Habitat for Humanity? Or are you making socks and then just hoping that you, as a great person that inspired the world because you created this great sock company, that they'll then go create their things and, solve world peace? You can try approach things at multiple levels. You can play multiple roles in it, but you have to figure out, like, is what you're doing or what you intend on doing actually going to solve the problem? And is that the right problem that you want to work on? What would life be like if you had this solved? Like, I say you created your sock company and spent all this money, and you only were able to donate $40 to Habitat for Humanity. Would that fulfill you? How would your life be? $40 versus $40 million. These are things you have to figure out in terms of what you want to create in your life. Also, you figure out, what are you willing to do to make something happen? There's a lot, people come up with a lot of ideas. I know I come up with a lot of ideas. Some of them I want to spend all my life doing. Others I don't want to spend 3 minutes doing. So another thing you have to, one of the things that helps figure out which problems you work on is what level of commitment you have to getting that particular problem solved. There's lots of problems that everybody can be working on. There's lots of problems that people should be working on. The question you need to ask yourself and your organization and your family is, what do you guys want to create in the world? And how much time are you willing to spend making that a reality for yourself and other people? And then also, what are you not willing to do? So you might be able to spend 40 hours a week at work, or you might be able to spend 4 hours a week at work, right? The other question is, what are you not willing to do? So are you not willing to travel 2 hours to your job now that everybody's going remote? Or are you not, if you get a new job, are you not willing to install tracking software to make sure that you're clicking everything? Are you not willing to dress up in a tux to go to a gala to, receive or give somebody an award? So you also have to figure out what you're not willing to do. And, what type of effect and effect do you want to have? And these words are different. So the affect is what psychologists call it affective, is emotional. And effect is, let's say, more physical. So the physical change in the world might be, more people are fed. And an affective change in the world might be more people are happy. So you have to, one of the things to think about in design is, are people, is what you want to create for people an affective thing or an effective thing? And, work from there. Let's jump back to this beautiful thing about design. Because we're thinking about these things now, we have these questions and we're trying to figure out, what it is that I want to do and, how do I zhuzh it? And in the design or the affective and effective thing, clearly we see this car. And this car, we have the headlights here and we have the side profile. But, cars kind of have an aesthetic or an effect. Like, you'll be able to know the difference between, a Honda and a Maserati. And that's because they have different body shapes and styles and kind of ways they move in the world. That's not, that's very hard to kind of say, it leans forward and this is bigger. And well, that's, curvier. That these are different things, that kind of come out of a design aesthetic. I was watching I was either watching something or reading an article about, and I think it was either Mercedes-Benz or BMW had an internal design competition between their automotive engineers and, trying to figure out what it is, what the next generation of cars are going to be like. And then, it had this very simple picture of like this curve. And, it had like two curves. And that won the competition. And, in the people that design cars, those two curves mean a lot, right? To us or me, it was just like two curves. But it was a great, explanation about the difference between that curve and how Mercedes-Benz had traditionally been shaped, right? And I guess in here, the most important aspect is this, where it's not an actual shape. Like you might not even know that this is a car, right? Because it's around here and you see these other implementations, like you see how this gets wider, like this does, and then this does, and then that does a little bit. It's kind of like a theme that goes throughout the car. That theme here, like this is more of the level of design that we're talking about than the, what might be in relatively high fidelity mock-up. We just kind of want to get a way or a type of way or emphasis about what it is that we want to do. We don't actually have to, solve all the problems and think all the thoughts. That's what the next phase is for. The next phase is in Discover, where you go out and research, all of the things that you need to do to start thinking about where you're going to spend your life and your time. All right, and that's it. So we're going to talk about homework, right? Cool. It is nice to think about design, but it's also more important to practice the design. So what we're going to do is, let's say we're going to, let's go back here and think about the different areas of your life. So what I want you to do for homework is, kind of copy this. We have the job and your career, your health, relationships, and investing. That's investment vehicles, not design vehicles. So let's just say these are areas of your life that you want to deal with. Now, the important thing about this exercise is that it keeps you thinking about things in general and not about the details of how to actually get it done. So what I want you to do is go through these different areas of your life and write down what you're what you're doing already and what you're, you know, what's probably going to be happening for the next year and what you want to be happening. So that's your first exercise. Your first exercise is list these, get out a piece of paper, and then under each happening, you say, okay, this is probably what's going to be happening for the year, but this is what I would like to be happening. Because, part of design is trying to create a better future. And writing down what it is that's already happening isn't describing a better future yet, but it gives you a basis of comparison. And then under that, you write, what it is you want to do. And we're just going to sit on that. We'll probably come back to that in later modules. But for now, just think about these different areas of your life. And, if you're gung-ho into business, create different areas of your job, your career path and whatnot to figure out what it is that you want to do and what it is that you're already doing. Rather, that was backwards. Okay. Now, and once you do that, I want you to go take a walk. Or I want you to meditate or sit still or do something where you're deliberately not doing anything. No headphones, just you, nature, sounds. You don't have to go, you don't have to go to a park. You don't have to go, just literally go outside of your house and walk around blocks. If you need more, specifics. So you go out your house, you go to the corner, you turn, and then you start going in concentric circles. So don't just go for a walk straight. You make a turn, go to the end of the block and cross the street and go around that block, do a cloverleaf pattern or do something that is not just straight. Right? Go in particular ways that, combination of blocks that you haven't done before. Why would you do that? Well, that's, so this is a spatial exercise. So when you're walking in new places or, you're coming down a street from a new way, different aspects of your, different parts of your brain are going to light up. The neurons are going to say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And when you do that while you're thinking of something else, what's happening is you're thinking of one thing and usually thinking is spatial and then you're walking in new ways. So what's going to happen is you're going to make different connections with different things simply because your brain at some time is going to have a little bit of reverberation and, making a turn this way might say, oh, well, since I was thinking about this, if I turn that way, then hey, new perspective. Trust me, it works more often than not because there's lots of examples, people saying, I want to walk and I was thinking about these things and now I know what to do with my life or, now I know how to solve this problem. It's because of the movement that's happening. So I want you to go move in new ways, but not anything complex like do a yoga routine. Put on some shoes or flip-flops, walk, make some turns, walk some more, make some turns, make it at least a mile. Now, also do this every day. Walks are great. Take your kids, take your dog. Don't take your dog, take the leash. That'll be fun. And just, get yourself moving. And then also the next day, after the walk, is when I want you to meditate and sit still. You don't have to worry about thoughts or not being thoughts or, quiet and not being quiet or silent or, the only thing you should be worrying about is just keeping your body still and comfortable and relaxed and thinking about this thing. Just dedicate 10 to 15 minutes, just like you dedicate 10 to 15 minutes. Well, actually, walk for an hour. How about that? Now, while you're doing that, what you want to do is list. You don't have to write it out, but think about the core values of the different areas of your life that you're thinking about or doing. Think about what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do. And then when you're done the walk and the meditation, then I want you to write a 1-page paper about the journey. Now, that's not the walk, the journey of what it is that you want to create. You want to say, okay, I'm going to create this, I'm going to have to do this. Like this is definitely planning, but I want you to focus at least half of it on what you want to create, what the impact is, what the impact you want to happen in whatever area that is. And then, 2-page paper. Then I want you to write a 1-page paper about your life after already having achieved that goal. Now, what this does is this helps you get into the mind, get into the motivation of something. Because a lot of people get, down into the doldrums because they're drudging through things. But if you write a 1-page paper about after having your life, having already achieved it, it might be you creating, new, more, better goals. It might be you just experiencing joy of having fulfilled that. Whatever it is, just write a 1-page paper about that. So the homework is go for a walk and meditate. Go for a walk one day, meditate the next day about the same topic as the walk. During that, you want to think about the core values of whatever that whatever you're thinking about and choosing to do. Also include what you're willing to do and not willing to do, and then write 2 1-page papers. One about the journey of actually doing the thing that you're deciding on, and also writing a 1-page paper about having already achieved that goal. All right. So my name is Byron Woodson. That is the end of this design course. And I hope you have a great day. So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to have, this was the design course. We're going to talk about the Discover course. And the Discover course is a chance for you to go out and do more research and new research about what exists in the world that you can then use to inform what it is that you want to choose to do, in different areas of your life, or the one area of your life that you're working on. So I'll see you next week.